Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be exploring the topic of scalability. The secret of getting what you want is to get a lot of people what they want. I've heard this little phrase a while ago and then I heard a ton of different variations to it. The other version is to bring value to a lot of people or to be valuable or useful to a lot of people. That is another, let's say, interpretation of it. But it's the same simple but profound concept. There's a little twist to it that you can also provide a lot of value to a few people or to a small amount of people, which would bring you to the same conclusion or to the same result. So let's explore those two possibilities or two options a little more. So on one hand, one can provide a little value to a lot of people or a lot of value to a few people. There is, of course, a concept of providing a lot of value to a lot of people, but we will leave it out for the sake of simplicity because those are rarely do people achieve those kind of results and outcomes. So we'll just keep these two and we'll explore them more. I would start with the first one, to bring a lot of value to few people or to one person. Let's say that one person also has to carry some objective or subjective value to other people or has carried that value in the past. Let me explain a little bit. I think the easiest way to explain it would be to give three examples. First would be an extremely skilled and experienced business advisor. Second, a specialized and skillful doctor. And the third one, an artist and a painter who is pretty famous or fairly successful, let's say. So the business advisor, imagine him or her giving a great advice to a CEO of some company. And that advice or that piece of software, that innovation that business advisor introduced or suggested brings a lot of value to that CEO who converts that into action and optimizes some business processes in the company, or that advice helped to bring a lot more clients on board or bring a lot of profits or open the company's borders to new markets. So in that case, that advice or that piece of innovation has brought a lot of value. And that business advisor can be lavishly rewarded. That is an example of providing a lot of value to one person. A second example is a doctor. Let's imagine an extremely skillful and specialized neurosurgeon who can perform some specific surgery that barely any people in the country can do. So that is extremely unique, and health is an extremely important component of people's lives, obviously, because you're talking about life and death, then people are willing to consider all options, right? So that person, that surgeon, can only help one person at a time with his skill, but that is providing a lot of value to just one person at that time when he can totally, let's say, help just a few people at a time. There is not much possibility for scale. And then the third example is that artist or painter, let's say, whose works, whose paintings are put in auctions and sold for like hundreds and thousands of dollars or just expensive, and then one person buys it, let's say, for 100,000 or for $1 million or whatever. That is that artist bringing a lot of value in the form of that painting to one person who bought it. That one person can buy it for all sorts of different reasons. For example, just to store wealth so it doesn't depreciate, or they want to flip it, so to say. They want to buy it and sell it for more in years, in a few years or in 10 years or whatever the purpose of that person, or the buyer can just have an aesthetic value in that painting, so they would just put it in their bedroom and they will enjoy it. Either way, that is a lot of value to just that one person, and then they're willing to lavishly pay for that value brought by that painter to them. So those are a few examples. There are much more. There are many more examples for that specific case, but that's an example of how one person can bring a lot of value to just one other person and get an extreme reward for that. And an example of bringing a bit of value to a lot of people would be, let's say, a famous YouTuber who does videos with pranks. So those videos bring a tiny bit of entertaining value, or it brings the person a little bit of, a small giggle in their day and raises their mood, and that's pretty much it. So just their day has become a little better, just a tiny bit, because they consume this piece of content. And that is bringing a bit of value to a lot of people, but it accumulates over time. So I want to show you the graph. Here on the vertical side is going to be quality, okay? And on the horizontal side, it's going to be quantity. So starting here at the bottom corner is going to be a fast food chain worker. First of all, I want to make a disclaimer that I respect and understand importance of all sorts of work, and I respect people who do that work, and I've done it myself. So I'll just take myself as an example. In 2015, I worked in one of those restaurants, or in one of those establishments, and I worked as a dishwasher. So basically, my job was to take silverware or dishes, rinse them, put them in the dishwasher, and once it's out, I just wipe it out. Not an extremely complex job, and pretty much anyone could do it with a little bit of training and maybe a little more training to do it efficient and fast. But so as me, an unskilled person, providing a little bit of value to an establishment that was comparatively not as big, let's say, as businesses next to it. Next, here in the graph at the top, somewhere here, let's say, would be a CEO or that skilled doctor that we were talking about, or an engineer, or let's say a lawyer who can provide a lot of value to few people and get relatively good outcomes. An important thing to mention about this upper scale, except let's say skill and experience, there are also a few factors that could bring person up to have person earn more or gain more. And those things would be, let's say, first would be skill and experience. The other thing is demand. The person might not be as skillful, but the job itself is in a really, really high demand by the market right now. So that job would get paid more, and that would mean that person would bring a lot of value to that industry, to that person, to their employer, to whoever they're going to be working with, right? There's also another important factor that is worth mentioning is risk. So, and also responsibility. Let's say risk, the job is extremely risky, like one of those when you go to coal mines, when you go underground, that is a risky job and that pays well, because in order to do that, you basically risk your life and in many cases your health, and there are different jobs in oil rigs and all sorts of dangerous jobs that also pay well. So apart from skill, it's demand, it's also risk and responsibility. Another factor that is important is the rarity, or how rare the skill is. that person has, or knowledge or experience, but rarity is not a significant factor. It has to come with another factors combined. On its own, it's not extremely valuable. Let's say a person has some rare knowledge about some sort of fungus, some sort of in botany or ornithology that has an extremely specialized and rare knowledge about something and experience about something, but that is not in high demand, and then it's pretty much not paid as much, even though it's rare. So rarity has to come in combination with one of those other factors. And then last but not least, probably there are other factors, but the ones that are important to talk about, there's also, let's say, an authority or recognition. So if that person has an authority or recognition comparing to other people, they would also get more or get paid more or get rewarded more, because if you take two specialists with the same skill and experience, and one is recognized, one is number one in the industry and is known as number one and recognized as number one, then that person would reap more rewards. So those are factors that are important to take into account on that vertical scale, right? And just look at the graph carefully and try to see what is odd, what is off with this graph, what is wrong. Let's take a look. Right, the horizontal line should be way, way longer than the vertical one because of an extremely important constraint that is called time. So quality cannot be separated from time. Quantity can be partly separated from time, right? And this here we introduce a concept of scalability. And this little line that we'll move a little further here, that would be a scalability extension. And if you go back to this graph and you look, let's say you want to place that famous YouTuber who does pranks, you would place somewhere in here. And here would be Jimmy Donaldson, also known as Mr. Beast, who is the most popular or the most watched YouTuber as of now. Somewhere around the area here would be Taylor Swift, one of the most popular singers as of this moment. Then we'd place here Larry Page, for example, one of the Google founders, and somewhere here would be Jeff Bezos, an Amazon founder. And if you would just think of any person, including the people you know personally, and you would place them somewhere on this graph, and you would find a very common thread among all those things, right? And this important concept that this horizontal line is way longer than the vertical line is an extremely, extremely important notion that took me a while to realize. And this is scalability. There are certain things that are scalable and some things that are not scalable. So among those scalable things are code or software, media content, there's AI and automation tools, there's advertising and marketing, which is often smacked together with media content, and AI and automation can be smacked together with code, although I think those are all separate things. Then there's also capital or capital leverage, finance, and last but not least, there's hiring or collaboration, right? And those different things can be combined in a different sort of mix together. It is an extremely good idea to have a scalable skill and another skill that could be scalable or non-scalable, right? And let me explain why. Let's say, for example, we'll take one of those videos on YouTube of a craftsman, let's say those carpenters that do amazing, fascinating work and creating those wonderful, let's say, chairs or custom made tables that have lights and all sorts of things in them. And they figured out how to also put the content out there on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or other platforms. So that's a combination of non-scalable skill because they can only do one chair at a time and they can only serve one customer at a time, and a scalable skill that they just post that video out there and people enjoy their craftsmanship, their mastery of their wonderful skill, and they really like watching those things. So that's a good combination, right? And imagine the carpenter who doesn't have a media. And I've met a lot of people in the past like that who are masters of their thing, of their craft, and they're struggling still to get to where they want to go or to, let's say, open up their potential or what they can do with things. And that's basically having one non-scalable skill, which limits you in time and limits you with, let's say, exposure of how many customers you can have. But if you manage to do both of those things and you learn, let's say, media content, skill, and then you publish those videos, that attracts a lot of customers for that person. For example, a lot of people see it, how masterfully and graciously they do cut that wood and make those wonderful decorations for those things. And it brings clients. So people just enjoy it, enjoy watching it, and they enjoy having beautiful things in their houses. They buy those things. So they come to that person. It brings basically those videos bring exposure to their masterful work and brings clients. So they order stuff and they buy things. That's one. So it just brings a lot more clients. As simple as that. Another thing is that also opens up a possibility for that craftsman to have a business, right? When there's a lot of influx, like big influx of clients, and there's a lot of demand for their work, they can hire people and produce more of those chairs or teach people how to do those things, and they can serve more clients. So they can expand or scale in that sense of, let's say, creating a business, right? Or they might, if they don't want to take it to a business level, they just want to keep doing what they're doing without building the whole business infrastructure, finance, and all that. They can just let's say, increase the price. So you can increase your income or the, let's say, reward that you get um, from your customers is either you sell more or you sell for more. So you sell the same thing with, let's say, for a higher price, right? So sell you do a higher price or you sell a lot more things, a lot more product, a lot more service to many more people. So those things are the things that that person would be able to do when they have that exposure and when they have a lot of demand, right? Or they just decide not to do either of those things. They just keep doing what they're doing, and at some point they decide to start educational content for people to learn how to cut wood properly or to polish it or all those things, and they want to switch to the education part of things, which they can also do if they decide to do so at some point. So that opens all sorts of possibility. Let's say if more clients, business, more profit if that's their desire, or just switching the field that they're working in, right? So all those things, just by the scalability of the media, in combination with their great skill in that non-scalable thing, that opens a lot of opportunities and possibilities for that person. The combination of scalable and non-scalable or scalable and scalable skill is crucial. And Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, one of the marketing let's say, advisors, right, who owns a marketing agency, and let's say one of the marketing business owners, to be more precise. He has figured it out a long time ago, like 5 years ago or 7 years ago. He was talking about it a lot, and I think he still does. And he says you have to be your profession, comma, media company. So you have to be carpenter, comma, media company. You gotta be an English teacher or language teacher, comma, media company. Your profession, comma, media company. So he's figured it out that it's a scalability tool that helps to grow your business, to gain exposure, to get more customers. Alex Hermosi has figured it out with his advertising models, the scalability concept. And it took me embarrassingly long to grasp my head around, to wrap my head around myself, which is a super important concept. Back to the concept. You provide some value to a lot of people, or you provide a lot of value to one person who can provide it to a lot of people. So it's one to many, which is one, you provide value to many people, or it's one to many, you provide value to some person who has provided value to other people, and probably a lot of other people in the past, who does it in the present, or who will do it in the future. So that's one to many. It could be also one to many, and so forth. You get the idea, right? But the more there are ones in the formula, right, the more people that are involved, the weaker the connection to the outcome is, to the end outcome. So that is a simple concept of one to many. So in the whole value giving process, there are 6 important parameters or measurement units to consider, right? If you draw a table and you would say quality, quantity, and then giver, value, and receiver. So here would be quality of the giver, quality of the value, quality of the receiver. And then quantity of the givers, quantity of the value, and quantity of the receivers. And here's why that is a valuable concept. Imagine the scenario where there's a low quality giver, low quality of value given, low quality of the receiver, low quantity of the givers, in this case, low quantities of value, low quantities of recipient. Lucky for us, I have that example of me washing the dishes again. So let's say it was a low quality giver, and again, we're just talking about economic value and value of the skills that are in demand at a given point and at a given location, right? So low quality giver, it's me in 2015, unskilled, not knowing English, because English is not my first language or my second language for that matter. So me, unskilled, not knowing anything, not having a valuable skill that is in demand, uh, providing a low quality value, which is my value was just, putting dishes, rinsing them, washing them, wiping them, right? And then to low quality recipients, in this case, the recipient of my work was a cook who took that plate and put, some stuff on it so the waiter can serve the customer and then everyone would benefit. So, and then there's also low quality of givers. Low quantity of givers, which is just me. So I was the giver, right? It's not a company that has a lot of people who provide value. Uh, that's how you would, let's say, scale that parameter. But so there was low quantity of givers. So it was just me giving low quantities of value, well, relatively low, because I was still doing a lot of output just because of the volume I did. And then there's low quantity of recipients, which is just my boss and a cook, let's say, and customer somewhat remotely as a consequence of that whole exchange. But let's say just a few people were on the receiving end. And as a different example, let's take a YouTuber who does vlogs, right? Who was just a normal person. And let's say quality of the giver is relatively low. Again, we're just talking about economic value and the skills that are in demand. They don't have any skills. They just record their life and the things they're doing day to day. So let's say low quality giver, low quality value because they're not teaching anything or not giving an extremely, a surgical operation on heart or whatever that is extremely valuable for a lot of people at the time. But so the value is low, and then the quality of the receivers, I would say, is low to medium because the people who are watching the person who just records their life are people probably just like that person and they're interested in the same stuff. Let's assume that just for the sake of simplicity. By the way, when I'm talking about the recipients and low value associated with them, an important thing to say that I believe that every person is intrinsically valuable and has potential. Okay, that's not what I mean on the personal level. I'm talking about, let's say, economic utility in this video. Okay, so there's no intent to offend anyone in that sense. And the quantity of the givers is just one, because that just one person records their life and the stuff that they're doing. And then quantity of value is high. Okay, it's in the green here. Let's assume that person puts a lot of videos out, like has 100 or 1,000 videos. So they put videos consistently every day. So they have high quantity of value. And then there is a high quantity of recipients. Let's say a lot of people, start to watch that person. So there's, let's say, low to medium, low, low to medium, extremely low, and then high, and then high. So that formula, or say those components, are great. Okay? That is a way to scale, or the way that that person can progress significantly comparing to other people, just because of those scalability vehicles that we were talking about earlier. An extremely important thing to understand is that quantity scales more than quality. Imagine a graph with, say, horizontal line which would reflect time, and then vertical line which would be results or output or reward that you would gain from it. So the things that are non-scalable, or let's say quality things, let's say, they go more like this. Okay, so that's the graph, right? And then maybe they bent a little bit, just slightly, because at some point they catch some breaking points and they can increase the quality significantly. But the bend is normally not as big for the vast majority of the companies. So the skill that is extremely, that it requires extreme dedication would be a very, very, very gradual and slow growth. So the speed of movement here is going to be slow. There's not a lot of bend in terms of output or outcome and progression. And then the scalable thing would start probably lower here, but then so it goes low, extremely low, because there's a low entry, um, so everyone can start doing it, but then nobody sees results for a while, and then it goes like this, and then it swoops up extremely high. So when it catches its breaking point, it scales. That's what the scalability is um, reflecting here, right? So it just goes like slow, 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 and it probably slower than the quality non-scalable thing for a good while, and then it just bands up and has an increased potential, like unbelievable amount of potential at that point. It's not extremely hard, like, I'm sorry, it's not super easy to get to that level, because if it would, everyone would be doing it, right? So you have to get a lot of patience and time to get through that point, and then it just swoops up if you do things right, of course, with a certain amount of quality involved. That's also, let's say, goes without saying. But that's the graph. It can swing really hard just because it has that wonderful opportunity or possibility for the scale. Another important thing to note is that the quality of value can rarely exceed the quality of the giver. So this parameter cannot exceed too much. It cannot exceed this parameter too much, because the level of your output or the value that you provide can rarely exceed the level of your self-development or business development, let's say. And that is an extremely important factor, right? There could be an exception to that rule when there is not a lot of quality as far as the skill goes, but the person puts a lot of time and dedication to just one person, and let's say gives a lot to that person, and with time that quality increases just by the way that things are done. But anyways, moving on to the next thing, that is an increasingly important thing to stress, back to our table. The goal is to get high on all those points, of course, to provide a lot of value to a lot of people and be valuable yourself. So that's a goal, to have super high, 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 extremely high in all those points. But the bottom one, which is under quantity, is the more important one, and I'll explain why. So the upper one has time constraint, and or extreme time constraint, or more time constraint than the other one, and the quantity, or the lower one, has less time constraint and can be disassociated or separated from the time. That is, with those vehicles that we discussed before, with, let's say, code and software, media content, then AI and automation, and then marketing, advertising, capital leverage, and finance, and hiring and collaboration. So those can significantly increase the level here on this lane in those three sections. So those are the ones that you want to focus on. But generally, you would want to, of course, progress and enhance the points in each and one of those cells, in each and one of those sections, if you will. Also, another thing is that quantity on its own is quality, right? By the amount of the, um, let's say, repetitions or things that you do, by the sheer quantity of output, you produce quality, because you learn a lot by doing a lot and producing a lot and giving a lot, and you learn how to make things more efficient and productive in that sense. So basically, quantity breeds quality. So those things come hand in hand, and they're inseparable, and it's important to focus on both, just because if you do a lot of quantity and your quality's extremely bad, nobody is going to buy your stuff, nobody is going to take your product seriously, because you just do a lot of this but your quality is pretty bad. So they come together, they come like a ladder. You grab one hand, quantity, quality, quantity, quality, and you walk like this upstairs. But the quantity is the one that I would really, really, really focus on. Quality, of course, has its importance, but it can only be scaled by time. Quality is really, really connected with time. So in order to acquire those rare skills that you can um, bring to other people afterwards, there's a lot of time and dedication and a lot of learning, a lot of patience involved in that. Those are um, cool things to understand about how scalable things can help you in life. And thank you for watching. And I hope you have a great day or a great night, and see you more on this channel. Cheers.